Yes.
Yeah. My name is Ken Sloan. I'm from president of Overland Council. And I'm glad I didn't hear the term economic growth today, because sustainability and economic growth seem to be counterintuitive sometimes today. That's just a quick...
All right, I'm going to start taking my drugs now.
Well, the question, nobody has mentioned lifestyle change throughout this discussion. And it seems like for such a long time we've changed things dramatically through crises. And higher gas, I hear talk of brownouts in our region. We'll take things like that to make people think of lifestyle changes, and how can we try to get people to think that way?
I think people are already thinking that way. And in other parts of the country, what we're seeing is that there's a couple of demographic drivers towards higher density settlement. One is baby boomers retiring and wanting to get rid of the big house and coming in something closer, more effective, more efficient. And the other is that Gen X and the millennials who grew up in the suburban cul-de-sacs hate them and want to be in cities. What I find in Northeast Ohio is that we're somewhat behind the curve in terms of zoning and other tactics to create the sorts of places that some segments of the market are already showing a desire to be part of. So some of these changes are taking place demographically rather than some sort of a top-down approach.
And I'm going to be more than above average obnoxious in reacting to your question. Look, without economic growth, this place is out of business and we're done. So having an anti-growth attitude is just basically telling your kids to move out of town. The question is what type and style of growth that you have. And it's also, what are we doing to encourage productivity? The fact of the matter is, you're going to get the automobile out of the Americans' hands either with a crowbar after they've died, or by increasing the price dramatically. Right. And the fact of the matter is that right now all the automobile companies are working on 40 to 50 mile per hour internal combustion gasoline engines that are going to work, and they're the reality for the future. We also have to realize that while there's lots of excitement and interest in hybrid vehicles, that most of the car companies really don't believe that they're going to be the replacement vehicle because they're too damned expensive. I don't know how many people outside of advocates that want to spend an extra $12,000 to $14,000 to sit on top of a lithium-ion battery, and how do you dispose of that thing is also going to be an interesting issue. Compressed fuel is probably a requirement. It will most likely be natural gas going forward, since we're sitting on top of tons of it. One of the big regional issues that we're going to have to confront is how do we go about producing, distributing with as minimal environmental impact as we can gas from the Utica Shale and the Marcellus Shale layers. That's a reality. Look at wind, great, terrific, wonderful. Right now it's an industrial-sized science experiment. It's not economically viable yet. Natural gas is here, and we're going to have to wrestle with it. And so all of that is around growth. Now, one of the things that's interesting coming out of the prick of the housing bubble, well, given Congressman Weiner, I should have used a different adjective, that what we really should pay attention to the fact it was homeowners in dense neighborhoods with good services held on to the value of their house. The other challenge, and we haven't talked about it here, and it's not going to be part of this effort, is how are you going to provide safe, high-quality schooling to people no matter what tax jurisdiction they live in. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here and I don't see any alternative other than vouchers if we're going to get low-income kids and an alternative to high-quality schooling. And what's propelling a lot of the movement out? Right. It's search for schooling. So in some ways, we have to look at this away from the traditional land use way planners look at it and start thinking about the value proposition that's there and what causes people to move. I was more than happy to put my kid on an hour 15 bus ride in one direction because of the quality of what was there.
Yes.
Policy, funding, all the things that we have to deal with here to get more money to the region. Specifically with public transportation, when it comes to funding, is the Consortium actually going to grant funds to different agencies to make things happen? Because there's a lot of great ideas, and I love to hear all these things happening, but what is actually going to happen is there's a lot of great ideas without funding. So how do you actually intend to solve the funding issue to make some of these great things happen in our community?
Oh, that's his.
I'm going to defer to my vice chairman being a good bureaucrat.
Thank you, sir. I think that the consortium itself won't have funds to grant, but you ask a great question that I think one of the things, and this is I think what's exciting about all of us from the region coming together, is as this evolves and we identify strategies for some of the things Hunter mentioned about quality connected places, transit would play a very big role in that. I think we could perform a powerful advocacy function. You know, as a region, if we can come to grips with identifying some policies that we feel will benefit all of Northeast Ohio, and transit's one of those, I think we've got a powerful voice of having the 4 MPOs and all the constituent elected officials that are a part of those agencies to try to lobby down in Columbus to say, look, we're an urban region, as Ned mentioned. We've got a third of the state's economy up here. We have people that need to get to work that don't have cars, and we need to have better service. I think the flip side is that's where we do have to look holistically at land use. I think transit is such a difficult industry to be involved with because it's always asked to be all things to all people. You know, why aren't you guys providing good bus service? And we have an environment, like Hunter said earlier, that where we have transit that's struggling to, you know, move beyond a 1950s urban environment into this really disjointed sprawl that we have. So it's difficult, but I think we can help make inroads.
And that's the importance of having a policy agenda coming out of this. The one thing that we know is that coming out of our current fiscal mess, both in the state and nationally, is that at some point we're going to have to rethink the forms and way in which we finance government. And so having a policy agenda of asking what do you want government to do probably is a better way to start the conversation rather than saying how much money does government have and how are we going to spend it. I
think and Ned is absolutely correct that part of what comes out of this ought to be a policy agenda which has the strength of 4 million people behind it. Mm-hmm. And the economy of Northeast Ohio behind it. The 12 counties involved in this are the core of a 23-county economic region.
Yep. That
is the worst performer in Ohio and one of the worst performers in the country. That's why our kids are leaving. And if we're going to, the sort of sustainable question we got to deal with is a sustainable economy. And we don't have one now. Sort of the simple answer is we really don't have one that's competitive at a national and global basis. And we have the potential for doing that, but we are, I think, in many ways, hamstrung by the inherent parochialism of our existing structure, which is a structure of go it alone. Now, let's take transit, for example. We have multiple transit agencies with multiple funding packages and streams, some of which are strong, like GCRTA, with a voted permanent sales tax that has allowed them to do things like the Euclid Corridor project, the health line, and to show real leadership. And they face major near-term issues, but they have a predictable, bondable funding stream. Until last year, the Youngstown area, the Mahoning Valley Transit Authority, had a funding stream based on the real estate value in the city of Youngstown, which has one of the highest abandonment rates in the state. They've changed that, the vote of the people, to a county-wide tax base that has to be renewed. It's better, but it's not very strong. Trumbull County has nothing. You see the same thing in our park system. Some are strong, some are weak.
Yep.
Even getting people together around their common interest about how are we funding our government. Is it the most efficient, most effective, most equitable? Can we learn from each other? Can we support each other? Can we create a set of systems that service our region overall so that you can get from one part of the region to another by a bus, by a bike? Can we learn from each other?
By a car.
By car. Can we learn from each other on issues of zoning? So that what we're spending money on in Youngstown, Ohio to learn to deal with green zoning can borrow from what's being done in Cleveland, Ohio. So I think you got a policy agenda, but one of the biggest issues, I think, is getting people together, not in sort of broad, let's dream about the future, but how are we functioning together as a region as a whole and within our individual communities? How can we improve that? I don't know the outcomes. I do know the outcomes have every promise of making for a better and more coordinated set of communities and a stronger political voice when it comes to addressing the issues that we have in Northeast Ohio.
Well, we are just about out of time. I'm afraid we don't have time for any more questions, but I know that Hunter and Ned in particular, and Jason as well, is looking forward to answering any questions you might have as you, buttonhole them in the lobby. This has been great and very provocative, not at all the direction I thought it was going to take in some ways, and I think that's very useful. It's clear that, if we understand one or two things about what's the work that has just begun, it's that this is heading towards something big, towards something that everybody's invited to, that everybody here can have a hand and have an opportunity to put their thumbprint on in helping to shape a policy agenda for the region that incorporates and encompasses not just land use planning or transportation planning, but environment and the connectedness of our communities and the future economic growth probably, we hope, of the region. But anyway, I thank you all for coming to the Ned Hill Show, and yeah, they'll be signing autographs. Thanks.
And you can tweet him too.